2026. I'm kind of wearing makeup. I definitely have it on, but it just didn't like. I just washed my face, and then this is just like what stayed on. So it's like, I'll wash my face again tomorrow. So now that's today. So yeah.
Decision. And the Canadian Constitution Foundation ride very busy roads. Individual cyclists and an activist group called Cycle Toronto challenged the law. One of the things that they argued was that removing the bike lanes actually violated their Section 7 Charter rights, which protects the right to life, liberty, and security of person. And the cyclists argued that removing the bike lanes would expose them to increased risk of injury and death. And bizarrely, this argument succeeded in the lower court. Justice Paul Chavez of the Ontario Superior Court accepted the cyclist argument. He found that removing the bike lanes deprived cyclists of the rights to life and security in a manner that he found was contrary to the principles of fundamental justice. He also rejected the government's argument that the challengers were asserting what we call a positive constitutional right to bike lanes, in other words, an entitlement. He concluded they were merely asking the court to prevent government from removing an existing safety feature. Now, the implications of that decision would have, as I mentioned, reached far beyond bike lanes or even transportation policy, because it would potentially change the scope of constitutional litigation and the ability of future governments to undo any policy choices that were made by their predecessors. So just think about it. Governments are constantly enacting laws, programs, regulations, and building infrastructure that's intended to achieve some benefit, make people healthier or safer or some other benefit. And if withdrawing one of those initiatives can now constitute a deprivation of life or security of person under our Constitution, governments could inadvertently create constitutional obligations simply by providing the benefit in the first place. And constitutional rights would then begin working as a one-way ratchet. A legislature could enact an ordinary policy today, only to discover that a future legislature can't repeal it without defending the repeal as a constitutional deprivation. And that would create an enormous new field of constitutional litigation. So the cancellation of a healthcare program, changes to policing policy, the removal of some safety feature or regulation, and a change to public infrastructure, or countless other policy decisions could now potentially be reframed as a Section 7 Charter claim on the theory that the government had increased someone's risk by withdrawing a newly created protection. Courts would then be asked not to just consider whether the government has violated a constitutional prohibition, but whether a particular government program and protection should continue. And that is a policy. Judges would increasingly be finding themselves adjudicating questions about risk, competing priorities, and the allocation of public resources. And that just changes the entire relationship between courts and legislatures.
Well, at least they're appointed.
That's why I say this case is about a lot more than bike lanes. And I think that the argument that was made in the lower court and accepted by the lower court is just untenable and wrong. So the Ford government appealed that lower court decision, and we at the Canadian Constitution Foundation intervened. And last week, the Court of Appeal of Ontario released a unanimous and concise 80-paragraph judgment rejecting the cyclists' claims and overturning the Chavez lower court decision. The Ontario Court of Appeals concluded that the Ford government can remove Toronto bike lanes. And writing for the court, Justice Grant Huscroft said that the lower court's decision was wrong in a, quote, profound sense because it subverts a fundamental principle of our democratic constitutional order. A legislature cannot bind its successors. That means if a legislature or if the Ford government can do something, the next government can undo it. The Charter does not require Ontario to build bike lanes, and if a government is constitutionally free to decide whether to build them in the first place, a future government must ordinarily be free to remove them. Otherwise, a voluntary policy choice could become constitutionally entrenched just because a previous government made it. And Justice Huscroft wrote that the Charter does not require the legislature to establish bike lanes, thus the Ontario government is as free to establish bike lanes as it is to authorize this removal. Another important aspect of the decision from the Court of Appeal of Ontario related to the role of social science evidence in constitutional litigation. Now, this is a sort of niche part of the decision, but it's very interesting because we often see these social science experts called before courts to opine on different matters in constitutional litigation. And Justice Huscroft wrote that, quote, academic expert evidence, social science research in particular, must be approached by the courts with considerable caution. It's often geared towards supporting preferred policy outcomes rather than discovering the objective truth of the matter under investigation. And courts are prone to missing the normative and policy dimensions of issues if they present in purely technical terms, ostensibly resolvable on an objective and uncontroversial basis by technical experts. The Court of Appeal concluded that the constitutionality of legislation regulating traffic does not ultimately depend on whether that legislation is made in accordance with expert advice. Huscroft wrote, legislation is not unconstitutional for failing to satisfy the preference of experts whose advice the government is not required to accept. Now, when we intervened in this case, we argued that this case is about positive rights, a positive rights claim. So in law, we have a distinction between what we call positive rights and negative rights. And in very simple terms, negative rights require the government to not do something, to leave you alone, while positive rights require the government to do something. And in my view, a claim that government must keep bike lanes is a positive rights claim. But the challengers argued that they were not making a positive rights claim. This was not a constitutional entitlement. Now, this is smart legal strategy because no court has ever found a Section 7 right to include a positive right. So the challengers sort of have to frame it this way, otherwise their legal argument is really novel and too out there and unlikely to succeed. But this was so obviously a positive rights claim that you have to really contort your mind that it isn't. And concluding that this claim wasn't about a positive constitutional entitlement to bike lanes would have really expanded Section 7 dramatically. If we said, if we accepted their framing that this is not actually a positive right, it means all kinds of other actual positive right claims can also be framed that way. And that would draw the courts into polycentric disputes about infrastructure design, transportation trade-offs, and the allocation of public resources, which are quintessentially matters for elected officials and not for courts. Now, as I mentioned, the lower court did a lot of that contorting. The lower court agreed with the challengers and concluded that this was not a positive rights claim. And that is the issue that we at the CCF intervened on. We argued that the bike lane claim was properly understood as a positive rights claim. The Government of Ontario's decision to remove bike lanes does not create a new threat to life, liberty, or security of person because the government has no obligation to designate bike lanes in the first place. Now, in our intervention at the Court of Appeal, we proposed a framework for determining when a litigant is actually advancing a positive Section 7 claim and when it is a negative claim. So first, a negative rights claim is one whose focus is to prohibit the government from taking legislative or other state action that creates a risk of life, liberty, or security of person that did not otherwise exist, or requires the government to take affirmative steps to mitigating an existing deprivation of Section 7 rights created by the government. So in contrast, a positive rights claim is one whose focus is to require the government to take steps that facilitate the enjoyment of Section 7 rights, or requires the government to maintain or extend a benefit that reinforces a Section 7 right, but which the government had no original duty to provide. And while the court didn't accept any particular framework for determining how to frame a right as negative or positive, they did agree with us that this was a positive rights claim. They concluded that the lower court's distinction between positive and negative rights was untenable, and Justice Huscroft held that an order under the Charter prohibiting the removal of bike lanes can only be understood as establishing a charter right to those bike lanes. So after I tweeted about the result of this decision on X, there have been a bunch of people yelling at me because they're just mad about the decision, so they're mad that I said I agree with the outcome of the decision. And one of the things they've been saying is that I've been mischaracterizing the lower court decision. I said that this is a case about a constitutional right to a bike lane, and a bunch of other journalists who have been covering the case also say this, and that's because that really is what this case is about. But a bunch of haters, as usual, are attacking me on X, saying I'm misreading the case, and that the lower court said that this isn't about a constitutional right to bike lanes. That's true. The lower court said it's not about a constitutional right to bike lanes, but I guess they didn't read the Court of Appeal decision, because the Court of Appeal said that it is about a constitutional right to a bike lane. It is a positive rights claim. That is a whole part of the problem in this case. So when people have that criticism, oh, you're misreading the case, that's not what the argument was, I mean, they're just accepting the framing from the lower court and from the cyclists. And the Court of Appeal did not accept that framing. They overturned the lower court decision and said this is a positive rights claim. So you can actually find this in the decision at paragraphs 37 through 39. This is where the Court of Appeal says this is a positive rights case and says the lower court was wrong to conclude otherwise. So if anyone criticizes you for saying that this is a case of a constitutional right to a bike lane, you can point them to those paragraphs. Let me put them up on the screen. Justice Huscroft wrote, the claim before the application judge was that bicycle lanes should not be removed to alleviate traffic congestion without violating Section 7 of the Charter. This, according to the application judge, was not a positive rights claim. It was instead a request to strike down legislation that put people at risk by removing the safety feature on roads. Paragraph 38. With respect, this distinction is not tenable. An order under the Charter prohibiting the removal of bicycle lanes can only be understood as establishing a charter right to those bike lanes. If the Charter prevents the removal of bike lanes because of the protection that they are thought to afford, it can only be because there was a constitutional right to that protection and hence to the bicycle lanes in the first place. Thus, despite the application judge's denial, an order prohibiting the removal of bike lanes would only ensconce the prior legislation. In effect, it would hold the legislation to a constitutional baseline created by prior legislation, denying the authority of the legislature to change policy norms. This is really good stuff. I love this decision. Every time I read it again, I love it even more. Now, I'd like to address one other criticism they've received in the way I talked about this case, which was actually not a part of the appeal case. So a bunch of critics of the Ford government who want to keep the bike lanes have called the decision to remove them government overreach. So I'll put an example up on the screen. This is someone saying the local government that was elected that put them in should trump the province, and they're obvious overreach here. Now, in fact, Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow also called it overreach. I'll put her tweet up on the screen here. She wrote, as mayor, I've been working to negotiate with the provinces to find a path forward. Disappointing to see this member of council, she's responding to another council member who supported the decision. Disappointing to see another member of council undermine the city's right to determine its own future and repeatedly side with provincial overreach. So politically speaking, I think you probably could say that this is provincial or government overreach, but it is not jurisdictional overreach legally speaking. And this is so uncontroversial, it was not even addressed in the Court of Appeal decision. Why is it uncontroversial? Well, municipalities are not a separate constitutional order of government in Canada. They are created by provincial legislation, and their powers are delegated to the province. The Constitution expressly gives provinces jurisdiction over municipal institutions in the province. So you can disagree with Ontario's policy, but the province exercising authority over municipality isn't, constitutionally speaking, any sort of overreach. So Toronto can make decisions about bike lanes because Ontario has given them that power. And the important point is that Ontario can also change the rules or take some of that power back. Now, you can believe that removing Toronto's bike lanes is bad policy. as I said, I'm going to be personally sad about not having bike lanes that I use all the time. But the reality is, if people are upset about that, then voters can punish the Ford government at the ballot box for doing it. The charter is not any sort of guarantee for your preferred public policy or even a guarantee of good public policy. Now, unless a government policy independently violates the Constitution, the remedy for bad policy is political. It's part of the electoral process. It is not a matter for the courts. And Justice Huscroft makes this very clear in the decision. He wrote, the charter does not require the legislature to establish bike lanes. Thus, the Ontario legislature is as free to establish bike lanes as it is to remove them or authorize their removal. The charter has nothing to say about whether bike lanes are a good or bad idea, wise or unwise policy. These judgments are no business of the courts. Like, massive applause here. This is such an important principle, and it's a principle that is much bigger than bike lanes themselves. But I would love to know what you guys think. I know that people don't like cyclists. I understand that, so I hope you guys still like me after my confession that I'm a cyclist and that I use these bike lanes. But just remember, I can like something, but not think that I'm legally entitled to it. That's the whole point that so many activists are missing. And I think their argument is just a terrible abuse of our courts and our system. So leave me a comment below and let me know what you think. Okay, that's all for this update. Thanks for watching, and let's keep fighting for freedom in Canada.
How long have you been doing it until you took this break? 4 years?
I started 2014 and I moved in with her in 2019 up in Maine. I lasted through the COVID thing. And then I was like, you know what, I want to go tell jokes.
They want you to die. Did you give her AIDS? Good question. Good question. So, very interesting. Why did you move to Maine for a girl?
Well, I was in a reality show. I grew up in Maine. And she happened to live in the town next to the town that I was doing a reality show.
Dim Springs?
That was
Very interesting. Mike, if you could give us one crazy thing that's happened to you in your entire life that you think makes your life different than everybody else's, what would that thing be? You ever have a near-death experience or save somebody's life or see anything crazy or like supposed to be in a building in 9/11 or something or like anything like that? Anything just wild?
spent a lot of time in jail.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, that was for work. So I spent time in 28 different jails and 25 of those were for work. So
Wow. Scared straight?
locked up.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, talk about an experience. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, no one ever fucked me too bad. I mean, I didn't have to get my shoes to anybody, but yeah, it was cool. It was crazy interpersonal communication with people. You know.
What was the craziest thing you saw in all your time in jail?
I saw this lady. I mean, it's not funny. This lady just wrecked this chick with this other chick in Maricopa County. Just slammed her head in the cell. It was pretty gnarly. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's not funny.
It's okay. It's okay, Mike. All right. Here's a medium-sized joke book. Thanks for signing up. Actually, no. Our first fucking woman. Mike St. Hilaire. Out there working the reality show business. All right. Oh my God, there she is. Flying in the book. The opposite of this guy, the beautiful Heidi. Isn't she something? Isn't she something? You know, it's funny how your priorities change with haircut and $100 and some policies starts looking like that. Slots for your next. So, for your next fucking poll, everybody, it's Dave Litz. Dave Litz. Waka waka waka, Manu. How's everybody doing tonight? So, she's alive. She survived for 10 years. Most people want their mother-in-law to die, but not me. My mother-in-law survived stage 4 pancreatic cancer for 10 years. I'm so excited. Yeah, absolutely. So she treated in stage 4 pancreatic cancer for type 3 diabetes and was the second person to have robot laser surgery to have her pancreas cut out, and I'm the first person to make a joke about it. My mother-in-law cannot go into remission because she doesn't have an organ anymore, but she can get repossessed. That's right. They put a contract out where she has to be a content creator to promote the pump that keeps her alive. So every morning she has to do a thing to show how great she is staying alive so that she can keep getting the medicine to keep her alive. So if you could, please like, subscribe, and share to keep my mom alive. Thank you, guys. What the fuck? Oh my God. Wow. If you came out with an accent, I'd be like, what happened to Ari Maddie? Yeah. What happened to him? It is wild, right? I mean, there's a lot going on here. He does. He looks like if Ari Maddie joined the Jackass crew and got his hair cut at Wondercuts and did shrimp. This is incredible. That's a 5-star review. Okay, Dave Litz. How long? First of all, you said that your mother-in-law is the first person to have stage 4 pancreatic cancer and have laser surgery to have her pancreas removed. You're going to be the first person to make a joke about it. What's the joke? I did it last time, Tony, but you didn't review my material. So I actually said she has now triabetes, which is, you didn't go for it, man. It's fun. Last time I was on, you called me a gay Nazi and threatened to bite the gym out of my face. So we're already doing better. I look like Ari Maddie. Like, he's one of the regulars, so. Wow. All right. This is incredible. Dave, how long have you been doing stand-up? Like I said last time, Tony, I've been doing it. Again, you don't know the reference last time. I don't remember it. Nobody remembers it. We do this every week. You just got to answer the questions. So how long have you been doing stand-up? 30 years.
There's no fucking way.
Absolutely no way. I did it in high school. Absolutely. I actually got kicked out of high school, and then I performed mostly in hospitals, nursing homes, and churches. So yeah,
Oh
I
my
perform constantly.
You turned hospitals into hospices.
Actually, I've done hospice care for many, many years, and that's where I started doing stand-up.
In hospices.
No, doing bedside comedy.
God, Tony.
I know,
I'm so frustrated.
Man, I'm so frustrated.
It's
No, I appreciate
incredible.
the questions, man. It's great.
I mean, you have to. You have to appreciate it, Dave. Are you mad at us?
Never. No. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, no, it's been a rough week, man.
Tell us about the week.
Well, my friend Michael Head got his episode aired last week, and he didn't get to see it. He actually died
What happened to
last
him?
Sunday.
What happened to him?
He did a cocaine addiction.
A guy that was on this show
Last week, episode with Yeye. That one that aired last week.
right? Was he always doing cocaine and fentanyl?
I think he was celebrating getting up on the show.
Dude, that's so fucked up for you to say.
Oh, dude, all week. Oh my God. I've been over probably 15 mics this week, and every mic that I start out, I give homage to Mike Head. He's an amazing comic. He was super funny. He did a great job. Did a way better interview than I'll ever do. And yeah,
we know that.
I miss him every day.
Did you happen to perform at his bedside that night?
No, but I am planning on performing at his funeral.
Are you really?
Yes, sir.
I mean, don't you think those people have been through enough?
I want to give it to him more. So.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
No, you're incredible. I love Tony. Tony's amazing. He's such a good guy.
What, are you going to give me a big joke book? What's going on here?
Actually, you gave a big joke book to a blind girl and then said that you only did it so that she could feel it, thus giving no value to big joke book. So I like my small joke book. It's amazing.
I don't even understand. I'm going to kill this fly. The ghost of Michael Good is here. It's trying to distract me from the chaos of Dave Litz. Dave, what's something interesting about your life before I get you out of here?
I just made it to number 9 in the world on a one-wheel hoverboard. I'm ranked number 9 on XR.
What does that mean? We don't know what a one-wheel hoverboard is.
One wheels?
The one wheels? How do you rank?
How do you ride miles? I just broke 8,857 miles.
Whoa.
Yeah. Here in Austin, I ride around the lake most of the time.
And then who's tracking this? Yeah.
It's on the app.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fuck yeah, dude. You're hoverboarding like crazy. We're gonna get this fly with this electric tennis racket. Michael Gonzalez likes to leave the back door open while he brings all of his drums in slowly one by one. One of the least hardworking Mexican people you'll ever meet in your entire life. Literally. It's actually, we've been watching. I watched the security footage. I know you leave that back door open. You have to close the back door behind you from now on. It's worth mentioning on the biggest live podcasts in the world. Dave, what do you think is the worst thing about you? Because everybody seems to not
I
like
think the
you.
worst thing about me is that my son died 10 years ago.
Give it to me right now.
How did your son die? He died in my arms while I was taking care of him.
Oh my God. Well, that's where he died. How did he die?
He had cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and macular degeneration of the cornea.
Now, normally a cornea injury and cerebral palsy isn't enough to kill somebody. What was the complication that he went through?
They don't know.
They don't know? Were you running your material by him when he was in your arms? This is one of the craziest interviews ever. Yeah. This is one of the most morbid. My job is not easy, people. It's not easy. You could not do any better. I promise you that.
So I was taking care of him 12 and a half hours a day, 7 days a week. That was my job.
I mean, if you were doing that, then who was doing all the hoverboarding?
I got my hoverboard after COVID.
Okay.
So I hadn't started yet. I had seen a hoverboard. They had just come out when Mac was alive. But
Was that your only child?
yes, sir.
Well, that is an interesting thing. Did you perform at his funeral?
I did.
What did you say there? Did you do any jokes?
Yeah, I did jokes about taking him to the skate park. So I used to, McCormick lived in a wheelchair. And so I built him a wheelchair that was remote controlled that do 60 miles an hour.
Hold on a second. I have to stop you here. First of all, why in the world was this wheelchair not a hoverboard?
Because they weren't out yet.
Okay, no, I get it. What made you turn it up to 60 miles per hour?
So then we could drive on the highway. So we would sit in the back of the truck and run interference. And then my ex-fiance had a over-the-road trucking company, so we could literally shut down the road. So I would be in the back of the truck steering, and McCormick would be following behind us, just laughing.
How old was he during this? 9. So now, hold on, let me get this right, because this is unbelievable.
I know. So that's why we're talking about it. I'm the #1 podcast in the world.
Hold on. Shut up, dude. Shut up. Only respond when I ask the question. Just hold on a second here. Because I need to make sure that we're all on the same page. I need to make sure that I understand what you're saying. So you're telling me, shut the fuck up. So you're telling me that you...
I'm okay. Julia Parisi. I'm thinking about a lot of different things, actually. But, I just feel like I don't have any community. And so, I don't know. not sure what to do about it exactly, but I have some ideas. Yeah. How are you doing?
We shut down the freeway. You
Right behind a truck that had an oversized load. That was it.
got it. That's what I meant. You were in a normal car, normal truck, normal like a pickup truck. You're in the back of the truck.
Yes.
Okay. What part of America were you doing this in?
Colorado.
Okay. What could go wrong? There's no mountains or hills there for a wheelchair to fall off of. Anyway, so you're in Colorado. You're behind an oversized load. The kid in the wheelchair is behind you, right? And you have him going 60 miles an hour.
Well, not at first. You have to speed up.
Right, of course. But the max speed was 60. You get him up to 60 miles an hour in a wheelchair.
Yes.
While he's laughing at age 9.
Yes.
And you don't know how he died?
He wasn't in a car accident.
No, we know. Why would you do that to your mom?
Okay, anyway, thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Especially thank you for commenting because it gives me something to work with. I'll probably do, I don't know, maybe I'll do another makeup one. I don't know. I kind of did a makeup last night. I'm excited to get this rest of this makeup off. It's kind of driving me crazy. Anyway, yeah. So I'll do a sleep stream probably. Maybe I'll eat a mango. I do have one. You can see it right now. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll see your comments in the next stream. Thank you for joining. Bye.